Black nurse kissed the wealthy CEO while he was unconscious, thinking he'd never know. But he heard Thursday night, 3:17 a.m. His breathing seemed different, more peaceful. Brain activity monitors showed unusual patterns, not better or worse, just different. Like his mind was surfacing from deep water but couldn't quite break through. What's worse, being violated or being misunderstood? Have you ever been accused of something your heart knew was pure? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She pressed her lips to his, believing he would never know. But consciousness is a cruel witness, and Daniel Whitmore heard every whispered confession that followed. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? Have you ever been the only one who cared? Tell me in the comments. The Mercedes wrapped around the light pole like expensive metal origami. Emergency crews worked for 3 hours to cut Daniel Whitmore free from what should have been his coffin. The drunk driver who ran the red light in Midtown Atlanta walked away without a scratch. Daniel didn't walk anywhere for weeks. Atlanta General Hospital buzzed with controlled chaos that Tuesday night. Trauma bays overflowed while understaffed nurses ran between patients like warriors in scrubs. The helicopter landed on the roof at 11:47 p.m., delivering Georgia's youngest tech billionaire in pieces that surgeons would spend 8 hours putting back together. Dr. Martinez emerged from surgery looking like he'd fought death and barely won. Severe head trauma, internal bleeding, 3 broken ribs, shattered left arm. We've induced a coma to reduce brain swelling. The next 72 hours will tell us if he survives. That's when Tasha Reynolds got the assignment that would change 2 lives forever. Private room 314 needs a primary night nurse, the charge nurse announced during shift change. VIP patient, so follow protocols. No visitors registered, which is strange for someone this rich. Tasha had transferred from Birmingham General 6 months ago, chasing better pay and calmer nights. Single mom wages didn't stretch far, and her 12-year-old son Marcus needed new school clothes. She'd seen plenty of wealthy patients, but none this alone. Room 314 held machines worth more than her apartment. Ventilator breathing for him. Monitors tracking every heartbeat, for drips feeding medication into veins that would heal or give up trying. The patient looked smaller than his newspaper photos suggested. Powerful men always seemed larger in pictures. Daniel Whitmore, 47, CEO of MindBridge AI, built his empire from foster care kid to tech royalty. The business magazines called him brilliant and ruthless. They forgot to mention he was human. She performed her duties with professional distance those first few nights, checking vitals, adjusting medications, ensuring his unconscious body stayed comfortable. But something bothered her. No flowers, no cards, no worried family members camping in the waiting room. Just expensive machines keeping him alive in expensive silence. The ventilator's rhythmic breathing filled the private room, while Atlanta's skyline glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows, a view worth millions that only unconscious eyes could see. Week 1 became week 2. His condition stabilized, but didn't improve. Tasha found herself talking to him during quiet hours, sharing small details about her shift, her son's soccer games, the way rain sounded different on hospital windows. Medical studies claimed coma patients could hear voices. She hoped hers brought some comfort to wherever his mind had gone. Doctor says your brain activity is good, she whispered while adjusting his pillow. You're fighting in there. I can tell. Her touch lingered longer than necessary when checking his pulse. Professional boundaries blurred when caring for someone so vulnerable, so isolated. He had olive skin that suggested Mediterranean ancestry, silver threading through dark hair, hands that had built empires but now couldn't even squeeze back. 2 weeks into his coma, exhaustion caught up with her. 14-hour shifts, Marcus home alone too much, bills piling up despite the overtime. She'd been caring for a man who might never wake up, might never know she'd kept him clean and comfortable and not completely alone. That's what happened. Thursday night, 3:17 a.m. His breathing seemed different, more peaceful. Brain activity monitors showed unusual patterns. Not better or worse, just different. Like his mind was surfacing from deep water but couldn't quite break through. She checked his pupils with her pen light. No response, but something about his face looked more relaxed. Maybe the medications were finally reducing inflammation. Maybe his body was deciding whether to heal or surrender. "I know you can't hear me," she said softly, "but you're not alone in here. Someone sees you." Then she did something she'd never done before, something that would haunt them both. She leaned down and pressed her lips gently against his. Not passion, not romance, just human connection to human connection. One soul acknowledging another's worth when the world had forgotten he existed. Her lips were warm against his cool ones for exactly 3 seconds. Then she pulled back, embarrassed by her own boldness, but not sorry for it. Some people deserve to be touched with kindness, even if they'd never know it happened. "I see you," she whispered against his ear. As her lips left his, she whispered the 3 words that would haunt them both. "I see you." What she didn't know was that behind closed lids, Daniel's mind recorded every syllable. But consciousness is a cruel witness. Behind Daniel Whitmore's closed eyes, behind the medication and the machines and the medical mystery of coma, his mind was wide awake. Trapped in his body like a prisoner in solitary confinement, he'd been aware of everything for days. Every conversation, every touch, every whispered confession. And now, every unauthorized kiss from a nurse who thought he'd never remember. The first words from his mouth weren't gratitude. They were an accusation that cut deeper than any scalpel. What's worse, being violated or being misunderstood? Have you ever been accused of something your heart knew was pure? Share your story. Daniel Whitmore's eyes opened like someone had flipped a switch. No gradual awakening, no confused blinking, just instant, sharp awareness that made the monitoring equipment go crazy with alarms. Nurse Janet, pulling the morning shift, nearly dropped her coffee when she saw him staring at the ceiling with laser focus. "Dr. Martinez to 314 immediately," she called over the intercom, hands shaking as she approached his bed. "Sir, can you hear me? You've been in an accident. You're at Atlanta General Hospital." His head turned toward her with mechanical precision. When he spoke, his voice was gravel and ice. "Where is she?" "Sir, you need to stay calm. The doctor is coming too." The night nurse. Black woman, about 30. "Where is she?" Dr. Martinez burst through the door with a team of specialists, but Daniel's gray eyes tracked past them all, searching for someone who wasn't there. The medical team ran through neurological tests while he answered questions with increasing impatience. "Cognitive function appears normal," Dr. Martinez muttered, scribbling notes. "Motor skills responsive. This is remarkable recovery from such severe trauma." "I want to speak with Tasha Reynolds," Daniel said, clearly. "Alone." The room went quiet except for beeping machines. "How do you know that name?" "Dr. Martinez asked carefully. "Because she's been taking care of me for 2 weeks. And we have things to discuss." Tasha was getting ready to leave after her night shift when security found her in the parking garage. Her heart hammered as they escorted her back inside, wondering what she'd done wrong, if someone had reported her for something. Room 314 looked different with Daniel Whitmore awake. The machines remained the same, but the energy had completely changed. He sat propped up in bed, watching the door like a predator waiting for prey to walk through. His eyes snapped open like a predator emerging from hibernation, steel gray and sharp enough to cut through her composure in seconds. "Close the door," he said before she could speak. Tasha's hands trembled as she pushed the door shut. Professional distance was impossible when facing someone you'd been intimate with, even if that intimacy was one-sided and unauthorized. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm so glad you're awake. How are you feeling?" "Like someone took advantage of me while I was unconscious." The words hit her chest like a physical blow. Color drained from her face as she realized what he was saying, what he somehow remembered. "I can explain." "Can you?" He leaned forward slightly, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Explain how you thought it was appropriate to kiss an unconscious patient, someone who couldn't consent or resist, or even know it was happening." "It wasn't like that." Her voice was barely audible. What was it like then? Because from where I was lying, unable to move or speak or defend myself, it felt exactly like that. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him, not when he was looking at her like she was something dirty that had crawled into his sterile world. You think because I was unconscious I was fair game? His voice was gravel and accusation. I felt everything. I never meant to hurt you. I thought you were. What? Dying? So that made it okay. She wanted to explain about the loneliness, about how no one had visited him, about how she'd been the only person who seemed to care if he lived or died. But those words died in her throat under his steel-gray stare. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll request a transfer. You won't have to see me again. Sit down. The command stopped her halfway to the door. She turned back, confused by the sudden change in his tone. I said sit down. We're not finished. Something in his voice made her obey despite every instinct screaming to run. She perched on the edge of the visitor's chair, ready to bolt if he called security. Daniel studied her face for a long moment. Reading expressions like code, he was learning to crack. The anger was still there, but underneath it something else flickered. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition of something he hadn't expected to find. Before she could defend herself, he leaned forward with dangerous intensity. But that's not why I asked to see you alone. I know what you overheard about my company, and we need to talk. Her confusion must have shown because his expression shifted slightly, anger mixing with something that looked almost like respect. Did you think I was only listening to your unauthorized bedside manner? I heard everything, Tasha. Every conversation that happened in this room, including the ones about my board members planning to steal my company while they thought I was dying. The world tilted sideways. She gripped the chair arms to keep from falling. I don't understand. Wednesday night, 2 men came to check on my progress. Expensive suits, worried voices, but not worried about my health. Worried about their timeline. One called me a vegetable. The other said they needed to move fast before I recovered and complicated their plans. Memory rushed back. The night she'd worked late, 2 men in the hallway speaking in hushed tones, something about board meetings and power transfers and windows of opportunity. She'd been focused on medication schedules, not boardroom politics. You heard them talking about corporate takeover, he continued, about forged documents and bought votes and money being moved offshore. You were the only other person in earshot. I didn't pay attention. I was working, not listening to, but you were there, which makes you a witness to conspiracy and embezzlement, which makes you either very valuable or very dangerous, depending on whose side you're on. The accusation in his voice had shifted into something more complex, not just anger anymore, but calculation. Like he was solving a puzzle that included her as either asset or threat. I don't want any part of your business problems, she said firmly. I take care of sick people. That's all. Unfortunately, what you want stopped matching the moment you kissed an unconscious man and accidentally witnessed corporate espionage in the same week. As security cameras captured their hushed conversation, neither realized someone was already watching, someone who would kill to keep those secrets buried. His phone buzzed with a text message. Daniel glanced at it and his face went cold. Speaking of people who might want to silence witnesses, he said quietly, "How fast can you pack a bag?" She came to his room expecting termination. Instead, she walked into a conspiracy that could topple empires. Would you risk everything to expose corruption? When loyalty conflicts with justice, which do you choose? Comment below. 20 minutes after Daniel's cryptic question about packing bags, his hospital room transformed into something that belonged in a thriller movie. He made 3 phone calls. One to his lawyer, one to his head of security, and one that made hospital administrators suddenly very cooperative. Mr. Whitmore requires extended privacy for business consultations, the charge nurse announced to Tasha's replacement. Room 314 is temporarily restricted access. Tasha stood frozen by his bedside, mind racing through implications she didn't want to understand. What's happening? Daniel was already pulling up files on his phone, despite the 4 still running into his arm. My board of directors thinks I'm a vegetable. They've scheduled an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning to declare me mentally incompetent and transfer control of MindBridge AI to my business partner, Richard Caldwell. Isn't he your friend? I thought so, until I heard him planning my professional execution while I was unconscious. His fingers moved quickly across the phone screen, accessing documents and bank records with the efficiency of someone who'd built an empire from code and determination. The hospital room transformed into a war room as he pulled up financial documents on his phone, numbers and betrayal illuminated in blue light. "Look at this," he said, angling the screen toward her. "Caldwell's been moving money for months. Small amounts at first, buried in legitimate expenses. But it adds up to $47 million diverted from our medical research grants." Tasha leaned closer despite herself, seeing columns of numbers that meant nothing to her, but clearly meant everything to him. Their shoulders brushed as she tried to follow his explanations, and she noticed he didn't pull away this time. $47 million, she repeated. From medical research, specifically from grants intended for AI development in underfunded hospitals. Inner-city health centers, rural clinics, places that can't afford cutting-edge technology but desperately need it. His voice carried a fury that went deeper than business betrayal. They stole from dying patients to fund their offshore accounts. That's horrible. It's worse than horrible. It's exactly the kind of systemic theft that keeps people like your son from getting the same quality health care as people like me. The comment caught her off guard. How did he know about Marcus? Then she remembered. He'd been conscious for her whispered conversations, heard her talking about soccer games and school clothes and single mom struggles. They stole from children's hospitals, from cancer research. While I lay dying, they gutted everything I built. But you're awake now. You can stop them. Can I? He pulled up another screen, internal communications between board members. Look at these emails. They've been building a case for my mental incompetence since the accident, claiming I was exhibiting erratic behavior before the crash, making poor business decisions, showing signs of psychological instability. Tasha read over his shoulder, close enough to smell the hospital's soap on his skin and see the pulse beating in his neck. The emails painted a picture of a CEO losing touch with reality, making impulsive choices, alienating business partners with paranoid accusations. "None of this is true," she said. "Of course it's not true. But perception becomes reality in corporate warfare. They have witnesses ready to testify about my alleged mental decline. They have documentation of supposedly reckless financial decisions. They've constructed an entire narrative that justifies removing me from my own company. Can't you fight it? Not from a hospital bed with no allies and no proof of their embezzlement." He scrolled through more documents, jaw tightening with each revelation. Caldwell's covered his tracks well. Every transfer looks legitimate on the surface. Every diverted fund has plausible documentation, except for what they said in this room. Except for that, which is why you're in danger. The words hit her like cold water. What do you mean? Think about it. You're the only witness to their confession, the only person besides me who knows their plans. If I'm declared incompetent, my testimony becomes worthless. But yours? I don't understand corporate law. I couldn't testify about. You don't need to understand corporate law to repeat conversations you overheard. Simple witness testimony about conspiracy to commit fraud. That's enough to trigger investigations that would expose everything. Tasha sank into the visitor's chair as reality crashed over her. They want to silence me. They want to eliminate loose ends. And right now, we're both very loose ends. As if summoned by their conversation, Daniel's phone buzzed with another text message. He read it and his face went stone cold. What is it? Security footage from the hospital parking garage. Someone's been watching you, Tasha. Following you to your car, photographing your license plate, documenting your schedule. Her blood turned to ice. My son. Oh God, my son. Where is he right now? School. West Side Middle School. He walks home alone because I can't afford aftercare and I'm usually working. She was already reaching for her phone when Daniel caught her wrist. Don't call him. Don't call anyone. Phone calls can be traced and intercepted. Then what do? I can't just leave him. You're not leaving him. We're going to protect him. Both of you. His grip on her wrist was firm, but not painful, anchoring rather than restraining. I have resources they don't know about. People who specialize in keeping valuable assets safe. We're not assets. Right now, you're the most valuable assets I have. The only people who can help me save my company and stop them from stealing millions more from hospitals that can't afford to lose a single dollar. Outside Daniel's room, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Too many footsteps for normal hospital traffic. Men in dark suits asking questions at the nurse's station, showing ID badges and asking about visiting logs and security procedures. They're already here, Daniel whispered, pulling her deeper into the room, away from the door. Whatever you decide, decide it fast. Stay and fight with me, or run and hope they don't find you. But understand this, running won't protect your son if they're determined to silence you. As security cameras captured their hushed conversation, neither realized someone was already watching, someone who would kill to keep those secrets buried. The door handle turned slowly, deliberately. Daniel's hand found hers, squeezing once in silent communication. Whatever came through that door would determine whether they lived to expose the truth or died to keep it buried. Enemies don't usually share midnight confessions, but desperation makes strange partnerships. Have you ever had to trust someone you barely knew? When has your gut instinct saved your life? Tell me your story. The man who entered room 314 wore scrubs, carried a medication tray, and had dead eyes that didn't belong to anyone interested in healing. Tasha noticed at first something about his walk, too purposeful for routine medication delivery. Her nursing instincts screamed danger before logic could catch up. She'd seen hundreds of orderlies in her career. This wasn't one of them. Evening medication for Mr. Whitmore. The fake orderly announced, voice flat and professional. Daniel was already reaching for the call button when Tasha moved. Pure instinct, no thought, just muscle memory from years of protecting vulnerable patients. She stepped between the approaching syringe and Daniel's foreline. I'll handle his medications, she said firmly. You can leave the tray. The syringe glinted in the hallway light as the fake orderly approached, but Tasha's intuition screamed danger before logic could catch up. Dead eyes assessed her like an obstacle to be removed. The man's hand moved toward his jacket, not where medical professionals kept supplies. Move aside, nurse. I said I'll handle it. Tasha's voice carried authority she didn't know she possessed. Behind her, Daniel was quietly pressing every emergency button within reach. The fake orderly lunged forward with the syringe, aiming for Daniel's central line. Tasha grabbed the medication tray and swung it hard, connecting with his wrist and sending the syringe spinning across the floor. Security, she shouted, louder than hospital protocol allowed. Security to 314. The man cursed and reached inside his jacket, producing something metallic that definitely wasn't medical equipment. But Daniel was already moving despite his injuries, rolling out of bed and pulling his stand with him like a weapon. The window, he yelled to Tasha. Fire escape access. Hospital security alarms screamed as the fake orderly realized his simple assassination had become complicated. Two more men appeared in the doorway. Not hospital security, but reinforcements who looked exactly like their colleague. Tasha's mind raced through options. The window led to a fire escape, but they were 3 floors up. The door was blocked by armed men pretending to be medical staff. Daniel could barely walk, let alone run. That's when her street smarts kicked in. Survival skills learned growing up in Birmingham housing projects. Instincts that no amount of nursing school could teach. Code Blue Room 314, she announced in the hallway at the top of her lungs. Code Blue 314. All available staff respond immediately. Code Blue meant cardiac arrest. Meant dozens of medical personnel would flood the room within seconds. The fake orderlies realized their window of opportunity was slamming shut. One of them raised his weapon just as the first real doctors burst through the door. In the chaos of medical emergency response colliding with attempted murder, the assassins made their choice. Disappear before questions got asked. They melted away like shadows, leaving behind only a dropped syringe and the metallic smell of fear. What the hell happened here? Dr. Martinez demanded, taking in Daniel standing beside his bed, Tasha clutching a medication tray like a weapon, and alarms screaming from every monitor. Someone tried to kill me, Daniel said simply, and she saved my life. 40 minutes later, real security had arrived. Not hospital rent-a-cops, but federal agents Daniel had summoned with phone calls that carried serious weight. The hospital room looked like a crime scene, complete with evidence bags and witness statements. The syringe contained potassium chloride, Agent Brooks reported to Daniel. Massive dose would have caused immediate cardiac arrest. Untraceable in autopsy, looks like natural complications from his injuries. Tasha sat in the corner chair, hands still shaking from adrenaline. She'd save a life tonight, but she'd also painted a target on her back that would never disappear. They'll try again, Daniel said quietly. Different method, better planning, but they'll try again. What about my son? Already handled. Agent Brooks showed her photos on his tablet. Marcus at school, surrounded by what looked like normal teachers and staff, but were actually federal protection. He doesn't know anything's different. To him, he's just got some new substitute teachers who happen to be excellent at their jobs. How long can you protect him? As long as necessary, Daniel answered instead of the agent. But protection is temporary. The only permanent solution is eliminating the threat. By exposing what they're doing. By destroying them completely. The words carried a coldness that reminded Tasha she was dealing with someone who'd built an empire through ruthless intelligence. Daniel Whitmore might have been vulnerable in a hospital bed, but his mind was a weapon that never needed healing. There's only one place we'll be safe while we gather evidence, he continued. My penthouse has security systems that make Fort Knox look casual. Military-grade protection, encrypted communications, resources they can't touch. I can't leave the hospital. You're still recovering. I'm discharging myself against medical advice. My injuries are healing, and staying here makes me a sitting duck for their next attempt. And me? What makes you think I want any part of this corporate war? Daniel looked at her directly, gray eyes sharp with something that wasn't quite respect, but was getting close. Because you stepped in front of a weapon to protect someone you barely know. Because you care more about doing what's right than what's safe. And because they're not going to stop hunting you whether you help me or not. Outside in the corridor, police were interviewing hospital staff about suspicious individuals, gathering descriptions of men who'd vanished like smoke when Real security arrived. But everyone knew professional assassins didn't give up after one failed attempt. They won't stop until we're both dead, Daniel said quietly. There's only one place we'll be safe, but you have to trust me completely. Chase through hospital corridors followed as backup assassins realized their colleagues had failed. Tasha's street smarts guided them through service elevators and kitchen exits while Daniel coordinated escape routes through encrypted phone calls. Loading dock, she directed, pulling him through corridors she'd memorized during 6 months of night shifts. Service entrance, no cameras in the blind spots. How do you know this? Grew up learning to disappear when necessary. Some skills you never forget. They reached the loading dock just as black SUVs surrounded the hospital's main entrances. Professional hunters were tightening the net, but they'd underestimated their prey's knowledge of the terrain. Daniel's personal security arrived in an armored sedan that looked ordinary but was built like a tank. As they climbed into bulletproof safety, Tasha realized she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked as Atlanta's skyline blurred past tinted windows. As police sirens wailed outside, Daniel grabbed her hand with desperate strength. "They won't stop until we're both dead. There's only one place we'll be safe, but you have to trust me completely." The car accelerated into the night, carrying 2 people who'd become allies by necessity toward a luxury fortress where millionaires' resources would protect a nurse's life, and where secrets worth killing for would either destroy them both or set them free. His penthouse became their prison, luxury bars on windows that couldn't keep out the truth between them. What drives you to succeed? Fear or ambition? Have you ever used success to heal old wounds? Share your motivation. Daniel Whitmore's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of Atlanta's most exclusive building. The elevator required both a key card and biometric scan to reach the private levels. By the time they arrived, Tasha felt like she was entering a fortress disguised as a home. 20 floors above the city, bulletproof glass offered a view of freedom they couldn't touch. Atlanta spread below like a circuit board of lights and possibilities. "Welcome to the safest address in Georgia," Daniel said, deactivating multiple security systems with practiced efficiency. Reinforced steel construction, independent power grid, communications that can't be intercepted. If they want to reach us here, they'll need military equipment. The space was exactly what Tasha expected from a billionaire's private residence. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her annual salary, art that belonged to museums. But something about it felt empty despite the luxury, like a beautiful cage where someone had forgotten how to live. "Your son is secure," he continued, checking messages on multiple devices. "My team moved him to a safe location with full protection. He thinks he's on an unexpected school field trip." "Where?" "Better if you don't know exact details. Plausible deniability if they try to extract information from you." The casual mention of torture techniques made her stomach lurch. "What kind of world do you live in?" "The kind where $47 million in stolen medical funding buys very dangerous silence." Daniel moved through his apartment with controlled precision, checking security feeds and encrypted communications. "Make yourself comfortable. We might be here for days." Comfortable seemed impossible when every surface screamed wealth and power. Tasha perched on the edge of a sofa that probably cost more than her car, afraid to relax in a luxury that wasn't meant for someone like her. "You have questions," Daniel observed, settling into the chair across from her. Without the hospital equipment and medical setting, he looked different, still wounded, but no longer vulnerable. Here in his domain, power radiated from him like heat from fire. "I have 1,000 questions. Start with the most important one. Why should I trust you? Yesterday, you were accusing me of taking advantage of you. Today, you're asking me to risk my life for your corporate problems." Daniel studied her face for a long moment, gray eyes measuring something she couldn't identify. When he spoke, his voice carried a different quality, less guarded, more human. "I grew up in foster care. No family, no roots. Bounced between homes where I was either ignored or mistreated until I aged out of the system at 18. I built this empire because I was tired of being powerless." The admission hung between them, unexpected vulnerability from someone who projected nothing but strength. "MindBridge AI wasn't supposed to be about money," he continued. "It was supposed to level playing fields, give small hospitals the same diagnostic capabilities as Mayo Clinic, bring cutting-edge medical technology to communities that couldn't afford it otherwise." What changed? Success changed it. Money attracts people who worship money instead of mission. "Richard Caldwell joined as my business partner because he understood the technology. I thought he understood the purpose too." Tasha watched him carefully, reading expressions that revealed more than his words. Behind the billionaire facade was someone who'd been betrayed by people he trusted, someone whose idealism had been weaponized against him. "The night you kissed me," he said quietly, "I wasn't angry because you violated my consent. I was angry because it felt like pity." "It wasn't pity. What was it then?" She considered lying, deflecting, maintaining professional distance. But they were past professional distance now, trapped together in luxury, while assassins circle below. "Loneliness," she admitted. "You looked so alone in that bed, surrounded by machines, but not by people who cared if you lived or died. I couldn't stand the thought of you slipping away without knowing someone had seen your worth. Even though you didn't know me, I knew enough. I knew you'd survived terrible injuries. I knew you were fighting to come back. I knew you deserved to be touched with kindness instead of just medical necessity." Daniel absorbed this quietly, expression shifting through emotions she couldn't read. Outside the bulletproof windows, Atlanta glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and unreachable. No woman should have to trade the one thing she's kept for herself just to keep someone else alive. The reference to her original surrogacy consultation caught her off guard. "How do you know about that?" I had you investigated after the assassination attempt. I needed to know who I was trusting with my life." He leaned forward slightly, voice gentling. 28 years old, never been in a serious relationship, working 3 jobs to support your son and keep him in decent schools. You were prepared to sacrifice your physical intimacy to pay for your mother's cancer treatment. Heat flooded her cheeks. That's private. Privacy is a luxury we can't afford right now. I know about the medical bills, the second mortgage on your mother's house, the reason you moved to Atlanta for better paying work. I also know you chose surrogacy because it was supposed to be clinical, impersonal, just a biological function instead of emotional connection. You think that makes me desperate or naive? I think that makes you brave in ways most people never have to be. The unexpected compliment disarmed her anger. She'd expected judgment about her circumstances, not understanding of the impossible choices poverty demanded. "Your turn," she said. "Why don't you have visitors? Someone with your resources, your success. Where's your family?" "You're looking at it." Daniel gestured to the empty penthouse. "This apartment, my company, my achievements. I built an empire, but forgot to build relationships. Success became my identity instead of my tool. That's lonely." It was. Until someone kissed me in a hospital room and reminded me what human connection felt like. The confession hung between them, charged with implications neither was ready to fully acknowledge. They were enemies who'd become allies, strangers who'd become intimate without meaning to, two people whose lives had collided in ways that couldn't be undone. Rain began pattering against the bulletproof glass, Atlanta's skyline blurring into watercolor impressions of light and shadow. Inside the penthouse fortress, silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but loaded with unspoken recognition. "What happens after we expose them?" Tasha asked. "After we expose them, you go back to your life and I go back to mine. Different worlds, different circumstances." This, he gestured between them, was survival necessity, not romance. But even as he said it, his eyes tracked the way she tucked her legs beneath her on his expensive sofa, the way she worried her bottom lip when thinking, the way her presence made his empty apartment feel less like a fortress and more like a home. When she emerged from the shower in his robe, water droplets tracing paths down her neck, the air between them crackled with more than just danger. And they both knew crossing that line would change everything. The guest bathroom had luxury amenities that made her tiny apartment's facilities look primitive. Hot water pressure that didn't fluctuate, towels soft enough to sleep on, toiletries that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. But wearing Daniel's silk robe, breathing air that smelled like his cologne, Tasha felt more exposed than protected. The fabric whispered against her skin as she returned to the living room, and she caught Daniel staring with an intensity that had nothing to do with corporate conspiracy. "Better?" he asked, voice rougher than before. "The shower was amazing. Thank you. There are clothes in the guest room. My assistant keeps emergency wardrobes for unexpected situations." "Do you often have women staying here unexpectedly?" "Never." The admission was immediate and honest. "You're the first person besides security who's been in this apartment in over a year." Something in his tone made her look at him more closely. Daniel Whitmore, master of the universe, sitting in his empty penthouse like a king in a castle with no subjects. All that power, all that wealth, and no one to share it with. That's a lonely way to live. It was safer. Emotional distance prevents people from getting close enough to betray you, or close enough to care about you. Their eyes met across the room, and something shifted in the air between them. Not just attraction, though that was there, electric and undeniable, but recognition. Two people who'd built walls around their hearts for different reasons, standing in the same fortress wondering if safety was worth the isolation. "I should get some sleep," Tasha said, though she made no move toward the guest room. "You should," Daniel agreed, though he didn't look away from her face. Thunder rumbled outside, Atlanta's storm system moving in from the west. Inside the penthouse, silence stretched taut as a wire, filled with things neither was brave enough to say aloud. The text was simple: "I'd like to meet her." 3 words that shouldn't have made her heart race, shouldn't have kept her awake staring at her phone. After all, this wasn't about her. It couldn't be. But Daniel's phone had buzzed with an encrypted message that made his jaw clench with fury. When he looked up at her, standing in his robe with damp hair and uncertain eyes, his expression carried a deadly calm that meant someone was about to pay for threatening what he decided to protect. "Pack light," he said quietly. "We're leaving in the morning." "Where are we going?" "To end this war before it destroys everything worth saving. Some boundaries exist to be broken, others to be surrendered willingly." When did you realize attraction had become something deeper? That moment when lust transforms into connection? Share that turning point. Morning never came. At 2:17 a.m., the storm outside Daniel's penthouse turned violent. Lightning cracked the sky while thunder shook bulletproof glass, and Tasha gave up pretending she could sleep in the guest room. Every sound made her jump. Wind rattling windows, elevators moving in the building, her own heartbeat hammering against her ribs. She found Daniel in his home office, still awake, surrounded by computer screens showing security feeds and financial documents. He'd changed into jeans and a black sweater that made his gray eyes look dangerous in the blue light of multiple monitors. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, taking in her borrowed silk pajamas and bare feet. "Sleep seems impossible when people are actively trying to kill you." "What are you working on?" "Evidence. Paper trails, money transfers, recorded conversations. Building a case so airtight that even corrupt judges can't ignore it." Daniel gestured to one of the screens showing bank records. "Caldwell's been sloppy. Greed makes people careless." Tasha moved closer, drawn by the intensity in his voice and the way concentration made him look younger despite the silver in his hair. "You really think we can stop them?" "I know we can. The question is whether we'll survive long enough to present the evidence." Another crack of thunder made her jump. Daniel noticed and stood, closing the distance between them with 3 steps. This close, she could smell his cologne mixed with something distinctly him, warmth and determination and barely controlled power. "You're scared," he observed. "Terrified," she corrected. "I'm a nurse from Birmingham. I take care of sick people and try to pay bills on time. I don't fight corporate conspiracies or dodge assassins." "You're stronger than you think." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you stepped in front of a weapon to protect someone you barely knew. Because you kissed an unconscious patient not from pity or power, but from compassion. Because you're still here when any reasonable person would have run." His hand lifted to touch her face, thumb tracing the worry line between her eyebrows. The contact sent electricity through her nervous system, awakening responses she'd kept buried for years. "Daniel, I know this complicates everything. I know we're from different worlds, dealing with life-or-death situations, operating on adrenaline and desperation." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I also know that when I thought I was dying, your voice was the only thing that made me want to fight to come back." The confession hung between them like a bridge, dangerous to cross, impossible to ignore. The city lights painted patterns across their skin as Atlanta watched through floor-to-ceiling windows. Witness to a connection neither had planned but both desperately needed. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Completely insane," he agreed, but his hand was already sliding in her hair, tilting her face up toward his. The kiss started gentle, a question rather than a demand. But when she responded, pressing closer instead of pulling away, gentleness transformed into hunger. Weeks of tension, days of shared danger, hours of forced intimacy erupted into desperate need. His mouth moved against hers with precision and passion, hands framing her face like she was precious instead of convenient. Tasha had been kissed before, but never like this. Never by someone who touched her like she was a miracle he couldn't quite believe in. "Are you sure?" he asked against her lips. Instead of answering with words, she pulled his sweater over his head, revealing surgical scars that mapped his vulnerability and strength in equal measure. Her fingers traced the evidence of his mortality, proof of the fragility that had brought them together. She traced the surgical scars across his chest, evidence of his mortality, proof of her healing touch. "You're not untouchable," she whispered. "Good," he replied, pulling her closer. "I'm tired of being unreachable." They moved together with urgency born from nearly losing each other, from recognizing that tomorrow wasn't guaranteed, from acknowledging that whatever existed between them was worth risking everything to explore. Daniel lifted her onto his desk, scattering financial documents and corporate espionage evidence to make room for something more important than money or power. His hands were reverent but demanding, relearning her body with the focus he brought to everything that mattered. "I dreamed about this," he confessed, voice rough with want. "During the coma, when I could hear your voice but couldn't respond, couldn't touch you back. What did you dream? That someday I could show you how your kindness saved more than my life. It saved my soul." Clothes disappeared like obstacles finally removed. Her borrowed silk pajamas pooled on the floor beside his jeans, barriers eliminated until nothing existed except skin against skin and hearts beating in synchronization. When he entered her, slowly and carefully, Tasha gasped at the rightness of it. Not just physical satisfaction, but emotional completion. Like finding a missing piece of herself in the arms of someone she'd been meant to heal and be healed by. They moved together with increasing urgency, chasing release and connection and the kind of intimacy that transforms strangers into something approaching forever. Outside, thunder provided percussion for their whispered confessions and shared pleasure. "Look at me," Daniel commanded softly when her eyes fluttered closed. She met his gaze, steel gray fierce with possession and vulnerability, and fell completely. Not just in a climax, but into something deeper and more dangerous than desire. Something that felt suspiciously like love. Afterward, they lay tangled on the leather sofa, Atlanta's storm painting their skin with lightning while their heartbeats gradually returned to normal. Daniel's arms held her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. "This changes everything," Tasha said quietly. "It changes nothing," Daniel replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Tomorrow we still have a war to fight. People still want us dead. You still have a son to protect and a life to return to. And you still have an empire to save." Exactly. But even as they spoke the words, both knew they were lying. What had just happened between them couldn't be undone or ignored or filed away as stress relief during crisis. It was too real, too powerful, too much like coming home after years of wandering. As dawn broke over their entwined bodies, Daniel's phone exploded with messages. His board had called an emergency meeting to declare him mentally incompetent. The war for his company had begun. "Time to go," he said, reading the flood of notifications. "They're moving faster than expected." "Where?" "Into the lion's den. We're going to that board meeting, and we're going to end this today." Tasha sat up, suddenly aware of her nakedness and the magnitude of what they'd just done. "Daniel, what happened between us was beautiful and complicated and probably the worst timing in history," he finished. "But it doesn't change what we have to do. And after, when this is over..." He looked at her for a long moment, memorizing her face in the morning light. "After this is over, we'll figure out if what we found in the darkness can survive in the daylight." They tried to steal his company while he fought for his life. Now he would reclaim his empire while fighting for hers. Have you ever had to fight for what was yours? When people underestimate you, how do you prove them wrong? Tell me your comeback story. The MindBridge AI boardroom occupied the entire 42nd floor of Atlanta's newest skyscraper. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the city, while the conference table could seat 20 people in leather chairs that cost more than most cars. Richard Caldwell stood at the head of that table like he already owned it. The boardroom gleamed with polished mahogany and sharp suits. Corporate vultures circling a wounded lion who refused to die quietly. "Gentlemen, ladies," Caldwell addressed the assembled board members, his voice carrying practiced concern. "We're here to address Daniel Whitmore's tragic incapacity following his accident. As you'll see from medical reports and witness statements, his condition requires immediate action to protect our company's interests." 12 board members nodded solemnly, reviewing documents that painted Daniel as mentally unstable, paranoid, and unfit for leadership. The narrative was masterfully constructed. A brilliant CEO whose near-death experience had left him psychologically damaged and prone to conspiracy theories. Dr. Harrison will present the psychological evaluation. Caldwell continued, gesturing to a man in an expensive suit who'd never actually examined Daniel. As you'll hear, Mr. Whitmore's current mental state poses a significant risk to MindBridge AI's future. That's when the boardroom doors opened. Daniel Whitmore walked in like he owned the building, which he did, flanked by Tasha and 3 federal agents who carried themselves like professional death. His recovery from near-fatal injuries was remarkable, but his transformation from vulnerable patient to corporate predator was absolute. Silence fell like a hammer. "Richard," Daniel said pleasantly, moving to his chair at the head of the table. "I see you started without me. How thoughtful." Caldwell's face went pale, then red, cycling through emotions like a broken traffic light. "Daniel, we weren't expecting, your doctors said." "My doctors said I made a miraculous recovery. Funny how miracles happen when people stop trying to kill you." The board members exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't the broken, paranoid man they'd been told to expect. This was Daniel Whitmore at full power, controlled, dangerous, and clearly planning something that would reshape their world. "Please, everyone remain seated," Daniel continued, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had built an empire. "Agent Rodriguez, would you kindly secure the doors?" Federal agents took positions that made it clear this wasn't a request. Suddenly, the boardroom felt less like a corporate meeting and more like a crime scene. "What's the meaning of this?" Board member Patricia Wells demanded. "Justice," Daniel replied, activating the room's presentation system. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me show you what happens when greed meets stupidity." The main screen filled with bank records, transfers, offshore accounts, embezzled funds traced through a maze of corporate shell companies. $47 million in medical research funding diverted to personal accounts over 18 months. "Richard here has been busy while I recovered from my accident," Daniel explained conversationally. "Stealing money intended for children's hospitals, bribing officials, planning my professional assassination while my body lay unconscious." "This is preposterous," Caldwell sputtered. "Daniel, you're clearly still suffering from your injuries. These paranoid delusions are supported by recorded conversations, witness testimony, and forensic accounting that would make the FBI weep with joy." Daniel clicked to the next slide. Audio transcripts of conversations recorded in his hospital room. Board members reading their own words describing him as a vegetable and discussing timeline for corporate takeover. "Gentlemen, you made one fatal error. You assumed I was still the man who went into that coma. I'm not. I'm something far more dangerous now." "What are you?" Wells asked, though she looked like she already knew the answer would terrify her. "I'm a man who died and came back to life with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for." Tasha watched from her position near the door, amazed by Daniel's transformation. This was the ruthless genius who'd built MindBridge from nothing. Brilliant, calculating, absolutely merciless when protecting what belonged to him. "The evidence you're seeing represents 18 months of systematic theft," Daniel continued. "Money stolen from cancer research, pediatric care programs, rural hospital funding. While you got rich, children died waiting for treatments your greed denied them." The room erupted in accusations and denials, but Daniel's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Agent Rodriguez, please read the charges." "Richard Caldwell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement of federal funds, and attempted murder." "Patricia Wells, James Morrison, David Chun, you're all under arrest for conspiracy and fraud." Federal agents moved with practiced efficiency, reading rights while handcuffing board members who'd traded ethics for profit. The corporate predators were finally facing bigger predators. Caldwell struggled against his restraints, fury replacing his earlier panic. "You can't do this. I have connections, lawyers." "You had connections," Daniel corrected. Past tense. Amazing how quickly people abandon sinking ships. This isn't over, Whitmore. You're right. It's just beginning. As federal agents escorted the conspirators toward federal prison, Daniel's phone rang with the call he'd been waiting for. His security chief's voice was grim with bad news. Sir, we have a problem. They got to the safe house. Daniel's blood turned to ice. What safe house? The boy, Marcus Reynolds. Someone leaked the location. Victory tasted sweet until security showed him the photos. Tasha with her son, both clearly in someone's crosshairs. Winning his company back meant nothing if he lost the woman who'd save his soul. Tasha collapsed into a chair as the implications crashed over her. While they'd been fighting for his company, someone had been targeting her son. The war wasn't over. It had just become personal. Where is he? She whispered. Missing, Daniel admitted, the word tasting like poison. But we'll find him. I promise you we'll find him. Who took him? Caldwell had partners we didn't know about. People with resources and connections that go beyond corporate crime. Outside the boardroom windows, Atlanta spread below like a maze where one 12-year-old boy was hidden somewhere among 8 million people. Finding him would require every resource Daniel possessed, and some he'd have to create. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I thought securing the company would end the threat. I was wrong. Tasha looked at him with eyes that mixed love and fury and desperate fear. Then we end it properly this time. All of it. Everyone involved. That could mean war, with people who make corporate criminals look like amateurs. Then we go to war. The woman who'd once kissed an unconscious patient out of compassion was gone. In her place stood someone who would burn the world to protect her child, and Daniel realized he'd do exactly the same thing to protect them both. She could protect her son or her heart, but not both. Until Daniel proved that real power means using it for people you love. Parents, how far would you go to protect your children? When love conflicts with safety, what's the right choice? Share your thoughts. The ransom call came exactly 12 hours after Marcus disappeared. Tasha's hands shook as she held the phone, Daniel's penthouse silent, except for federal agents coordinating search efforts and her son's voice crackling through encrypted communications. Mom, Marcus sounded scared but unharmed. These people say they want to talk to you. Baby, are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine, but they say. The phone was taken away. A voice she didn't recognize, cold and professional, replaced her son's frightened words. Ms. Reynolds, we have something you want. You have something we need. What do you want? Your boyfriend's evidence. All of it. Every document, every recording, every piece of information he's gathered about our business arrangements. Daniel was already tracing the call while recording every word. His expression carried the focused intensity of someone calculating odds and finding them unacceptable. If we give you the evidence, you'll return my son? If you give us the evidence and disappear permanently. Leave Atlanta, leave the state, never speak about what you've seen or heard. Your son lives, you live, everyone lives. Simple transaction. And if we refuse, then your boy learns what happens to people who interfere with billion-dollar operations. The line went dead. Tasha sank onto Daniel's sofa, phone slipping from nerveless fingers. Everything she'd fought to protect, Marcus's safety, his future, his innocence, was being held hostage by people who killed as easily as they breathed. We can't give them the evidence, Daniel said quietly. Without it, they'll destroy hundreds more lives. Steal millions more from hospitals that can't afford to lose funding. I don't care about hospitals right now. I care about my son. I know. And I care about both of you, which is why we're going to find another way. Daniel moved to his computer, fingers flying over keyboards as he accessed resources that existed in legal gray areas. The call originated from a warehouse district near the airport. 12 possible locations, all owned by shell companies that trace back to Caldwell's partners. How long to search 12 buildings? Too long. But there's another option. The playground in Birmingham looked innocent enough. Swings moving in empty wind, slides reflecting afternoon sun, but danger lurked in every shadow where a child might play. Daniel's plan was simple and insane. Trade himself for Marcus. walk into their trap carrying fake evidence while real federal agents surrounded the location. Use himself as bait to draw out enemies who'd remained hidden behind corporate facades. Absolutely not, Tasha said when he explained. I won't trade your life for his. You're not trading anything. This is my choice. It's suicide. It's strategy. They want me dead anyway, but they need the evidence first. That gives us leverage. What if something goes wrong? What if they kill you both? Daniel looked at her with an expression that mixed love and determination and the kind of certainty that came from having nothing left to lose. Then at least I'll die protecting people I love instead of dying alone in a hospital bed. The admission hung between them, not just that he loved her son, but that he loved her. In the middle of kidnapping and corporate warfare and life-threatening decisions, love had declared itself with quiet finality. If loving me puts your son at risk, then walk away. I'll understand. Her answer would define them both. Tasha studied his face. The man who'd accused her of taking advantage, who'd become her partner in survival, who'd shown her what it felt like to be desired instead of needed. The choice should have been simple. Her son's safety versus everything else. But Daniel wasn't asking her to choose between Marcus and him. He was offering to sacrifice himself, so she wouldn't have to choose at all. No, she said firmly. We do this together or not at all. Tasha, together, as partners, as equals. Or you can find somewhere else to be a hero. The warehouse district looked exactly like every crime movie location. Abandoned buildings, broken windows, industrial decay that provided perfect cover for illegal activities. Daniel's security team had surrounded the area, but the exchange would happen inside where backup couldn't immediately reach them. Remember, Daniel said as they approached the designated building, they need us alive until they verify the evidence. That gives us maybe 10 minutes to find Marcus and signal for help. And if the evidence doesn't check out, then we better be very good at improvising. The warehouse door opened before they could knock. Armed men in tactical gear motioned them inside without speaking, professional soldiers who'd been hired to solve problems that couldn't be handled through legal channels. Marcus sat tied to a chair in the center of the empty space, scared but unharmed. When he saw Tasha, relief flooded his face. Mom, I'm here, baby. Everything's going to be okay. Richard Caldwell emerged from the shadows, no longer the polished executive but desperate and dangerous. Federal prison had been replaced by fugitive status, and desperation made him unpredictable. The evidence, he demanded, extending his hand toward Daniel. The boy first. Evidence first. Then we'll discuss your son. As Marcus ran toward her across the empty warehouse, Tasha saw the black sedan approaching too fast, but before she could scream, Daniel's security team materialized like guardian angels. The real battle was just beginning. Chaos erupted as federal agents breached the warehouse from multiple entrances. Smoke grenades and tactical lights turned the space into a war zone where survival depended on staying low and moving fast. Daniel tackled Tasha to the ground as bullets shattered concrete around them. Stay down. Where's Marcus? Safe. My team got to him first. Through the smoke and gunfire, she could see her son being carried to safety by federal agents who treated 12-year-old lives as precious cargo. Whatever happened to her and Daniel, Marcus would survive. Now what? She shouted over the sound of tactical operations. Now we finish this. Daniel stood and walked directly toward Caldwell, ignoring bullets and smoke and trained killers like he was strolling through his corporate office. The move was so unexpected, so completely insane, that even the shooting paused. Richard, he said conversationally, you made another mistake. What mistake? You assumed this was about money and evidence and corporate control. Daniel smiled with predatory satisfaction. This was about family, and you just threatened mine. The federal agents moved with professional efficiency, neutralizing threats and securing evidence, while Daniel stood in the center of controlled violence like the eye of a hurricane. This was power beyond money. This was what happened when someone with unlimited resources decided to protect people he loved. When the smoke cleared, Caldwell and his remaining associates were in federal custody. Marcus was safe in his mother's arms. And Tasha was looking at Daniel like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. "Is it over?" she asked. "The immediate threat is over, but there will be trials, testimony, months of legal proceedings. And us." Daniel looked at her holding her son, both of them safe because he'd been willing to risk everything to protect them. Love wasn't always about flowers and romance. Sometimes it was about walking into warehouses full of armed men because someone's child needed rescuing. "That depends on whether you can forgive me for putting him in danger in the first place." Marcus looked up at both of them, old enough to understand that something important was being decided. "Mom, is he going to be my stepdad?" The question hung in the air like a bridge between their complicated present and uncertain future. Some answers couldn't be rushed, but some truths couldn't be denied. "We'll see, baby," Tasha said softly. "We'll see." But when Daniel's hand found hers and Marcus leaned against them both, it felt suspiciously like family. The boy who'd never had a father figure met the man who'd never wanted to be one, and changed both their worlds forever. Blended families aren't always blood relatives. Who became family to you through choice rather than birth? Celebrate them in the comments. 2 weeks after the warehouse rescue, Daniel Whitmore was supposed to be focused on rebuilding his company and testifying against corporate criminals. Instead, he found himself in Chuck E. Cheese at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, watching Marcus Reynolds destroy his high score on every arcade game. The transformation was remarkable. The terrified boy from the warehouse had become a confident kid who treated Daniel like a combination of Big Brother and personal ATM. And Daniel, who'd never spent 5 minutes around children, was discovering that 12-year-old logic was refreshingly direct. "You're not very good at this," Marcus observed, watching Daniel fail spectacularly at a basketball shooting game. "I'm better with computers than sports." "Mom says you're really smart." "Your mom is very kind. She also says you saved our lives." Daniel stopped shooting baskets and looked at the boy who'd inherited his mother's direct gaze and stubborn chin. "We saved each other." The arcade exploded in neon colors and electronic chaos. A far cry from corporate boardrooms, but Daniel found himself laughing as Marcus demolished his high score on every game. They'd been spending time together while Tasha worked day shifts at the hospital, an arrangement that started as practical necessity and evolved into something Daniel hadn't expected to enjoy. Marcus was smart, curious, and completely unimpressed by wealth, qualities that made him surprisingly good company. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said, abandoning a racing game to focus on more important matters. "Sure. Are you trying to replace my dad?" The question hit harder than Daniel expected. He'd been wondering the same thing, worried about overstepping boundaries in a relationship structure he didn't understand. "What happened to your father?" Daniel asked carefully. "He left when I was 5. Said Mom and me were too much work." Marcus delivered this information matter-of-factly, like discussing weather. "Mom cried a lot, but she got over it." "I'm sorry." "It's okay. He wasn't very nice anyway. He yelled at Mom and forgot my birthday." Marcus studied Daniel with measuring eyes. "You don't yell at Mom." "No, I don't. And you remembered that I like pepperoni pizza. That's important information. You're not trying to replace my dad, are you?" Marcus asked directly. "No," Daniel answered honestly. "I'm trying to be something new, if you'll let me." The honesty seemed to satisfy something in Marcus that adults usually try to dance around. Children appreciated straight answers, even about complicated situations. "Like what kind of something new?" "Like someone who shows up when I say I will. Someone who keeps promises. Someone who thinks you and your mom are worth protecting." "That sounds better than a replacement dad." "I think so too." They played games until Marcus got hungry, then moved to a corner booth where pizza and root beer facilitated deeper conversations. Daniel found himself answering questions about everything from corporate mergers to why he didn't have kids of his own. "I never thought I'd be good at it," he admitted. "Taking care of people, being responsible for someone else's happiness." "You're doing okay so far." "Thank you. That means a lot." "Mom's happier now," Marcus observed, demolishing his third slice of pizza. "She sings in the shower again. She didn't used to do that." "She sings old songs from when she was young. Stuff her mom used to play." Marcus grinned. "You should ask her to sing for you sometime." The idea of Tasha singing, happy enough to sing, made something warm uncurl in Daniel's chest. He'd given her reasons to be afraid, to worry, to fight for survival. Knowing he'd also given her reasons to sing felt like an unexpected gift. Marcus, can I ask you something important? Okay, how would you feel if your mom and I got serious? If I became a permanent part of your lives? Marcus considered this while working on his fourth slice of pizza, giving the question the serious thought it deserved. Would you still take me to places like this? Whenever you wanted? Would you help Mom when she's stressed about bills and stuff? Yes. Would you teach me about computers and business things? If you're interested in learning, and you wouldn't leave if things got hard or complicated? The question revealed depths of abandonment fear that no 12-year-old should carry. Daniel understood suddenly that this wasn't just about accepting a new male figure. This was about trusting that someone would stay. I've been alone most of my life, Daniel said carefully. I built walls around myself because I thought that was safer than risking being hurt or left behind. Your mom showed me that walls also keep out good things. Love, family, belonging. So now that I know what it feels like to have people worth staying for, I'm not going anywhere. Marcus nodded like this made perfect sense. Good, because Mom really likes you, and she's been sad for a long time before you showed up. How can you tell she likes me? She talks about you when she thinks I'm not listening, and she bought new underwear. Daniel nearly choked on his root beer. She told you that. I saw the shopping bags. Mom only buys fancy underwear when she really likes someone. The insight into Tasha's private preparations was both endearing and mortifying. But Marcus seemed to find his mother's romantic life as straightforward as everything else. Plus, Marcus continued, she let you sleep over last night. She never lets guys sleep over. How do you know I slept over? Your coffee mug was still warm when I got up for school, and you were wearing different clothes than yesterday. Daniel realized he was being investigated by someone with excellent observational skills and no filter about sharing conclusions. Are you okay with that? Me sleeping over sometimes. As long as you don't walk around in your underwear or leave the toilet seat up. Marcus paused thoughtfully. And as long as you keep making Mom happy. I'll do my best. Cool. They finished lunch while Marcus explained the social dynamics of middle school and Daniel shared edited stories about corporate negotiations. The conversation flowed easier than most business meetings, built on mutual respect and shared interest in Tasha's well-being. Driving back to Tasha's apartment, Daniel found himself thinking about family in ways he'd never considered. Not the idealized nuclear family from television, but the messy, complicated, chosen family that forms when people decide to care about each other despite circumstances. Daniel, Marcus said from the passenger seat. Yeah, thanks for saving us. Mom tries to act tough, but I know she was really scared. She is tough. That's why she was worth saving. But you were scared too, weren't you? Daniel considered lying, maintaining adult pretenses about fearlessness and control. But Marcus had been honest with him, deserving the same in return. Terrified, he admitted, I'd never had people I cared about in danger before. It's different when it's not just your own life at stake. Yeah, Marcus agreed with the wisdom of someone who'd learned early that people you love could disappear without warning. It's scarier when it matters. They pulled into the apartment complex as Tasha was getting home from her shift, tired but smiling when she saw them together. Marcus ran to hug her while Daniel hung back, watching the reunion with something that felt suspiciously like contentment. When Marcus fell asleep between them during movie night, Tasha whispered the question that terrified her. What happens when this crisis ends? When you don't need us anymore? Daniel's answer would reshape their future. I'll always need you, he whispered back. Not because of danger or crisis or circumstances. Because you're home. The word hung in the air between them. Simple, profound, absolutely true. Home wasn't a place or a building or an address. It was Tasha's laugh and Marcus's questions and the feeling of belonging somewhere that wasn't built from money or power. Are you sure? She asked. More sure than I've ever been about anything. Marcus stirred in his sleep, unconsciously anchoring them both to the couch and to each other. Outside, Atlanta glittered with possibilities, but inside, Three people who'd found each other through circumstances that should have destroyed them were building something that felt permanent. Good, Tasha said, settling deeper into Daniel's arms. Because we're keeping you. Revenge is best served with innovation. And Daniel Whitmore was about to revolutionize more than just technology. Have you ever turned your worst experience into your greatest strength? How did pain become your purpose? Share your transformation story. 6 months later, Daniel stood on the stage of the National Healthcare Technology Conference, looking out at an audience of doctors, administrators, and investors who would determine the future of medical innovation. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the MindBridge AI logo alongside words that had become his mission: healing through connection. The tech conference stage blazed with spotlights as Daniel unveiled Health AI, technology born from hospital rooms and healing hands. Innovation inspired by the woman who'd saved him. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel began, his voice carrying to the back of the packed auditorium. 6 months ago, I lay unconscious in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines that kept me alive but couldn't keep me human. Today, I want to show you technology that does both. The screen behind him filled with images of the new Health AI platform. Artificial intelligence that didn't replace human caregivers but enhanced their ability to heal, diagnose, and connect with patients who needed more than medical intervention. This platform exists because a nurse in Atlanta showed me that healing requires both technology and humanity. Innovation means nothing if it doesn't serve human hearts. In the audience, Tasha watched from the VIP section, wearing a dress that made her look like she belonged among healthcare industry leaders. 6 months of being Daniel's partner had taught her to navigate worlds she'd never imagined entering. But she still felt most comfortable in scrubs, caring for patients who needed her hands and heart. Beside her, Marcus fidgeted in his first real suit, trying to understand why hundreds of important people were listening to his almost stepdad talk about computers and hospitals. Daniel had insisted they both be here for his keynote speech, claiming their presence made him braver than any corporate presentation. Health AI integrates with existing hospital systems to provide real-time diagnostic assistance, predictive modeling for patient care, and most importantly, tools that give healthcare workers more time to do what technology can't: provide human connection during healing. Daniel clicked to the next slide. Testimonials from nurses and doctors who'd beta-tested the system in hospitals across the Southeast. Their stories painted pictures of technology that enhanced rather than replaced human judgment, tools that helped caregivers spend more time. Traditional healthcare AI focuses on efficiency and cost reduction. Health AI focuses on outcomes and human dignity. Because healing happens not just through medicine, but through being seen, heard, and cared for by people who understand that patients are human beings, not medical problems. The audience erupted in applause. Healthcare workers stood first, recognizing someone who'd created technology that served their mission instead of replacing their purpose. Administrators followed, realizing they were seeing innovation that could transform their institutions without sacrificing the human element that made healing possible. Daniel found Tasha's eyes in the crowd, drawing strength from her proud smile and Marcus's enthusiastic waving. This presentation wasn't just about corporate success. It was about proving that near-death experiences could birth something meaningful, that love could inspire innovation, that profit and purpose could coexist. 6 months ago, the man responsible for stealing $47 million from medical research funding sat in this very conference, presenting technology designed to maximize profits while minimizing human contact. Today, that money has been recovered and reinvested in hospitals that serve communities most in need of technological advancement. Another wave of applause, but Daniel wasn't finished. Richard Caldwell and his associates believed healthcare was a business where efficiency mattered more than empathy. They're currently serving federal prison sentences while their victims, the hospitals and patients they stole from, are receiving not just returned funding, but access to technology that will save lives for decades to come. The vindication was complete. Not just legal justice, but professional transformation of everything Caldwell had tried to corrupt. Daniel had taken his enemy's greed, and turned it into innovation that served the very people who'd been harmed. But this isn't a story about corporate crime or technological advancement, Daniel continued, his voice softening as he looked directly at Tasha. This is a story about what happens when someone sees your worth when you can't see it yourself. When compassion becomes the foundation for innovation. When love teaches you that real power means using everything you have to protect people who matter. Public displays of affection shocking corporate world. Claiming each other openly came naturally now. Daniel had learned to show the world that his greatest achievement wasn't building an empire. It was earning the right to call Tasha and Marcus his family. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the inspiration behind Health AI. Nurse Tasha Reynolds, who showed me that healing begins with human connection, and her son Marcus, who taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choosing to show up. Spotlight found Tasha and Marcus in the audience. She stood gracefully, acknowledging applause while Marcus waved like he was accepting an Academy Award. The crowd loved them, this unconventional family built from crisis and sealed with commitment to something larger than themselves. Health AI launches in 60 hospitals across 10 states beginning next month, Daniel announced. With priority placement in facilities serving underinsured communities, rural areas, and inner-city populations that have been systematically denied access to cutting-edge medical technology. As applause thundered through the auditorium, Tasha felt dizzy, not from excitement, but from morning sickness she'd been hiding for weeks. The secret growing inside her would change everything again. The reception following Daniel's presentation buzzed with conversations about partnerships, implementation timelines, and investment opportunities. But Tasha found herself stepping outside for fresh air, one hand pressed to her stomach as nausea threatened to overwhelm her in front of healthcare industry leaders. Mom! Marcus appeared beside her, 13 years old now and increasingly attuned to adult emotions. You okay? Just tired, baby. It's been a long day. You look like you did when you had the flu last month. All green and shaky. Perceptive kid. Too perceptive sometimes. I'm fine. Let's get back inside before Daniel wonders where we went. But Marcus was studying her with the intensity he'd inherited from spending months around federal investigations and corporate warfare. Mom, are you pregnant? The question hit like ice water. What makes you ask that? You've been throwing up in the mornings. You fell asleep during that movie last week, and you're glowing like pregnant ladies do on TV. 13-year-old logic was terrifyingly accurate. Marcus, is it Daniel's baby? We're not having this conversation in a hotel lobby. So, is Daniel's baby? Marcus grinned like he'd solved a particularly satisfying puzzle. That's so cool. I'm going to be a big brother. You can't tell Daniel yet. I haven't figured out how to. Tell Daniel what? They turned to find Daniel approaching, still glowing from his presentation success, but immediately focusing on Tasha's pale complexion and Marcus's excited energy. Nothing, Tasha said quickly. Just tired. Daniel knew her well enough to recognize deflection. His gray eyes moved between her face and Marcus's barely contained enthusiasm, connecting dots with the same analytical skills that had built his empire. Tasha, he said quietly. What aren't you telling me? Marcus looked between them, clearly torn between keeping his mother's secret and sharing news that thrilled him. Finally, teenage excitement won over adult discretion. You're going to be a dad, he announced happily. Silence stretched between them while hotel lobby conversation continued around their private revelation. Daniel's face cycled through surprise, joy, concern, and something that looked like overwhelming gratitude. Are you sure? He asked Tasha. 3 pregnancy tests, sure. When? About 7 months from now. And you're going to tell me when? When I figured out how to explain that we're having a baby in the middle of rebuilding your company and testifying in federal trials and trying to figure out what we actually are to each other. Daniel stepped closer, ignoring the public setting and curious observers. His hands framed her face with the gentleness she remembered from their first real kiss. What we are to each other is family, he said firmly. What we are is people who love each other enough to create new life. What we are is sure. Are we? I am. Daniel's voice carried absolute certainty. I'm sure about you, about Marcus, about this baby, about building something permanent that can't be threatened by corporate criminals or outside circumstances. Daniel, marry me. The proposal hung in the hotel lobby air, witnessed by healthcare industry leaders and conference attendees who'd recognized the story when it inevitably became corporate legend. Right now? Tasha asked. Right now, tomorrow, whenever you're ready. But marry me because I want to sign papers that make us officially family. Because I want this baby to have parents who are committed legally and emotionally and completely. Marcus bounced on his toes with excitement. Say yes, Mom. Say yes, so we can plan a wedding and I can wear another suit. The laughter that bubbled up from Tasha's chest felt like champagne, effervescent and celebratory, and absolutely right. This wasn't the romantic proposal she'd imagined as a girl, but it was perfect for the unconventional love story they'd been writing together. Yes, she said, loud enough for half the lobby to hear. Yes, I'll marry you. Daniel's kiss tasted like triumph and promises and the kind of happiness that grows from surviving impossible circumstances together. Around them, strangers applauded because some moments are too joyful to ignore, even when they belong to people you don't know. Can we plan the wedding before the baby comes? Marcus asked practically. I want to give a speech about how you guys met. That might be an interesting speech, Daniel observed. Yeah, I'll leave out the part about corporate assassins and just focus on the romantic stuff. There was romantic stuff? Tasha teased. Mom kissed you when you were unconscious. That's totally romantic. Daniel and Tasha looked at each other, remembering hospital rooms and accusations and the kiss that had started everything, and burst into laughter that drew more curious stares from conference attendees. Come on, Daniel said, taking both their hands. Let's go home and plan a wedding. In a nursery, Marcus added. In a future, Tasha finished. As they walked toward the hotel exit, Daniel's phone buzzed with congratulations messages from colleagues who'd witnessed the impromptu proposal. But he ignored the corporate celebration to focus on something more important. The woman carrying his child and the boy who'd taught him that love multiplies instead of divides. Behind them, the healthcare conference continued with presentations about medical innovation and technological advancement. But the real innovation was happening in their intertwined hands and shared laughter and the recognition that some healing happens not through technology, but through people who choose to build families from the most unlikely circumstances. The future stretched ahead like an open road, wedding plans and baby preparations and the daily work of building something that would last. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be theirs. She'd spent weeks healing his body. Now her body was creating new life that would heal them both. How do you protect your happiness from other people's opinions? When has love required courage from you? Tell me about your brave moment. 3 months into Tasha's pregnancy, the world decided to have opinions about their unconventional love story. The magazine cover of the grocery store checkout showed Daniel in his expensive suit beside Tasha in her nursing scrubs, with a headline that made her stomach clench. Tech billionaire's baby mama. Gold digger or true love? Marcus grabbed the magazine before she could stop him, reading aloud with the dramatic flair of a 13-year-old who discovered adult stupidity. Sources close to the couple question whether former nurse Tasha Reynolds trapped Daniel Whitmore with an unplanned pregnancy after inserting herself into his life during his medical crisis. Give me that, Tasha said, snatching the magazine away. Mom, this is garbage. You know that, right? I know that. You know that. But millions of people are going to read this and think that they're idiots who don't understand real love when they see it. Sometimes her son's wisdom surprised her. But understanding that tabloid journalism was trash didn't make the headlines hurt less when she was already dealing with morning sickness, wedding planning, and the complexity of merging their very different worlds. The ultrasound screen glowed with grainy magic, a tiny heartbeat flickering like Morse code, spelling out their future in rhythmic dots of light. Everything looks perfect, Dr. Martinez announced, the same doctor who'd treated Daniel after his accident. Strong heartbeat, normal development, due date looks accurate for early spring. Daniel squeezed Tasha's hand. eyes glued to the monitor, showing their daughter moving like she was already eager to meet the world. She's beautiful. How can you tell it's a girl? Marcus asked from his chair beside the examination table. Intuition, Daniel replied, and wishful thinking. I want a daughter who looks exactly like your mom. What if it's a boy? Then I want a son who's as smart and brave as you. The easy affection between Daniel and Marcus still amazed Tasha. They'd built their relationship on mutual respect and shared protection of her, creating bonds that felt as strong as blood despite having no genetic connection. But the outside world wasn't as accepting of their chosen family structure. Mr. Whitmore, Dr. Martinez said carefully, I should mention that several reporters have been asking hospital staff about Ms. Reynolds' pregnancy. HIPAA laws protect her privacy, but they're persistent. What kind of questions? Daniel's voice carried an edge that meant someone was about to regret their career choices. Timeline questions. Whether the pregnancy was planned. Whether there were previous relationships that could complicate paternity. Tasha felt heat flood her cheeks. They're questioning whether the baby is yours. Standard tabloid procedure, Daniel said grimly. Create doubt, manufacture scandal, sell magazines to people who enjoy other people's drama. Can they do that? Just make stuff up? They can't print outright lies, but they can print speculation disguised as journalism. Sources say and rumors suggest, and questions remain about anything they want to question. Pregnancy hormones intensifying desire, mixed with fury over media intrusion, made Tasha want to simultaneously cry and punch something. Daniel seemed to recognize her emotional state and move to defensive positioning. We're going to handle this, he said firmly. Together, as a team, like we handle everything else. How do you handle lies about your personal life? By living our truth so loudly that lies can't compete. That afternoon, Daniel called a press conference that surprised everyone, including his publicist. Instead of corporate announcements or business developments, he stood before cameras with Tasha and Marcus, ready to address their relationship directly. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel began, my fiancée and I want to address speculation about our family. The press room buzzed with anticipation. Celebrity CEOs rarely acknowledged tabloid coverage, let alone responded to it publicly. Tasha Reynolds and I met when she was my nurse following a serious accident. She provided exceptional care during my recovery, and yes, we developed feelings for each other during that time. Our relationship is built on mutual respect, shared values, and love that grew from genuine connection. Reporters raised hands with questions, but Daniel continued without pause. Our baby was conceived in love between two adults who chose each other freely. Anyone suggesting otherwise is either misinformed or deliberately creating fiction for profit. Mr. Whitmore, a reporter called out, what do you say to critics who suggest Ms. Reynolds saw an opportunity with a wealthy patient? Daniel's expression went cold. I'd say those critics don't understand that real gold diggers target men who are conscious and capable of making financial decisions. Caring for someone in a coma is the opposite of opportunistic. It's compassionate. But the timeline shows that Tasha cared for me when I couldn't offer her anything except medical bills and uncertainty. She chose me when I was broken, not when I was powerful. Tasha watched him defend their love with the same intensity he brought to corporate negotiations. This was Daniel at his most protective, using public platforms to shield their family from manufactured controversy. Furthermore, Daniel continued, anyone questioning our son Marcus's place in this family clearly doesn't understand that love creates bonds stronger than biology. He's my child in every way that matters. Marcus beamed at being claimed so publicly and definitively. One more thing, Daniel said, looking directly into the cameras. Tasha Reynolds is the strongest, most principled woman I've ever known. She saved my life before she loved me, and she continues to save my soul every day. Anyone who has a problem with our relationship is welcome to keep their opinions to themselves. Media challenge. Confronting racist comments and gold digger accusations with united front became their new reality. Comment sections filled with praise and condemnation in equal measure, but their unified response made it clear that outside opinions wouldn't influence their decisions. That evening, they sat in Daniel's penthouse reading reactions to the press conference. Social media exploded with hashtags supporting and condemning their relationship, strangers taking sides in a love story that belonged only to them. "Look at this one," Marcus said, scrolling through his tablet. "Someone said you guys are relationship goals, and they hope they find love like yours. And this one says I'm a gold digger who trapped a rich man." Tasha read from her phone. "This person says our baby will be beautiful because mixed families make the prettiest children," Daniel added. "And this one says mixed babies don't survive in our world," Tasha continued, her voice catching slightly. Daniel immediately took her phone away. "We're not reading the negative ones anymore. But they're out there. People really think. People who don't matter think things that don't matter. Focus on people whose opinions actually affect our lives." "Like who?" "Like Marcus, who thinks we're perfect together. Like Dr. Martinez, who's excited to deliver our daughter. Like our friends who've watched us build something real from impossible circumstances." Marcus looked up from his tablet. "Also, like the 500 people who commented that they met their spouse in weird circumstances, too." Apparently, lots of people have crazy love stories. The threatening letter arrived with their morning coffee. Explicit photos of Tasha and Marcus, with a message written in red: "Mixed babies don't survive in our world." Daniel's response would be swift and merciless. The envelope had been hand-delivered, which meant someone had bypassed building security to make their threat personal and immediate. Daniel's expression went from protective to predatory in seconds. "Call Agent Rodriguez," he told Tasha while carefully handling the letter with tissues. "Full FBI investigation, complete security sweep, and I want to know who's been watching our family." "Daniel, maybe we should." "Should what? Hide? Apologize for loving each other? Let terrorists dictate how we live our lives?" "I'm just scared." "Good. Fear keeps you alert. But don't let fear make you small." Within hours, their apartment building was flooded with federal agents treating anonymous death threats as seriously as organized crime. Daniel's resources meant that threats against his family received immediate professional response. The letter was printed on common office paper with a standard printer, Agent Rodriguez reported. But the photos were taken with professional equipment from multiple locations over several weeks. This isn't random hate mail. It's organized surveillance. Organized by who? "We're investigating connections to Caldwell's associates who weren't caught in the initial arrests. Some people lost significant money when his embezzlement scheme collapsed." The realization that their love story had created new enemies was sobering. Daniel had destroyed a criminal network, but criminal networks had friends and partners, and people with nothing to lose seeking revenge. "What do we do?" Tasha asked. "We live our lives," Daniel said firmly. "We plan our wedding, prepare for our daughter, and refuse to let hate win. And if they escalate, then they discover what happens when you threaten someone's family and that someone has unlimited resources and very little patience for terrorism." The steel in Daniel's voice reminded Tasha that she'd fallen in love with someone who'd built an empire through strategic thinking and ruthless execution. His gentleness with her and Marcus was real, but so was his capacity for destroying people who posed threats to what he protected. "I need to know you're both safe," he continued. "Enhanced security, modified routines, professional protection until we eliminate the threat completely." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." As they held each other that night, their daughter moving restlessly between them like she could sense the tension, Tasha wondered if love was always this complicated. If choosing someone always meant choosing their enemies too. Accepting that happiness required constant vigilance against people who couldn't bear to see others succeed. "She's active tonight," Daniel observed, feeling kicks against his palm. "She knows something's wrong, or she knows something's right. That she's wanted and protected and loved before she's even born." The thought was comforting. Their daughter would enter a world where threats existed, but she'd also enter a world where two people had fought through every obstacle to create space for her to exist safely and happily. "I love you," Tasha whispered in the darkness. "I love you too." Both of you. All of us. Even when it's complicated, especially when it's complicated. Easy love isn't worth much. Love that survives everything. That's the kind that changes the world. Some enemies hide behind boardroom smiles, others behind badges and family names. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted was working against you? How did betrayal change you? Share your story of overcome deception. The wedding venue looked like something from a magazine. Magnolia trees in full bloom, string lights creating stars against the afternoon sky, white chairs arranged in perfect rows facing an altar that overlooked Atlanta skyline. Everything was ready for their ceremony in 3 days. That's when FBI agent Rodriguez called with news that changed everything. We identified the source of the threatening letters, he told Daniel over an encrypted phone line. You're not going to like this. Daniel activated speakerphone so Tasha could hear while Marcus played video games with noise-canceling headphones, giving them privacy for adult conversations that had become too common in their household. Who is it? Dr. Patricia Wells, your former board member. Silence filled Daniel's office. Wells had been arrested with the other conspirators, had pleaded guilty to embezzlement charges, had been sentenced to federal prison. She was supposed to be contained, neutralized, no longer a threat. She's in federal prison, Tasha said. How is she sending letters? Prison visits, smuggled communications, outside contacts coordinating harassment campaigns. White-collar criminals maintain networks even behind bars. The parking garage echoed with footsteps and fluorescent humming as Daniel confronted the man who'd orchestrated everything. His own former business partner turned enemy. But it wasn't Caldwell waiting in the shadows of the parking garage beneath Daniel's building. It was someone whose betrayal cut deeper because it had been hidden longer. Hello, Daniel. Thomas Brennan stepped into the light. Daniel's security chief. The man responsible for protecting their family. The person who'd coordinated every safe house and escape plan and federal cooperation. The person who'd been feeding information to their enemies from the beginning. Tom. Daniel's voice stayed steady despite recognizing that they'd been betrayed by someone with access to every detail of their lives. I should have known. Should have known what? That you were working for them from the start. Brennan smiled without humor. Working for myself, actually. Caldwell's operation was profitable, but small thinking. I've been building something much larger. Using my resources and my trust. Using whatever tools were available. Your near-death experience created opportunities for people smart enough to see them. Tasha moved closer to Daniel, recognizing that they were trapped in an empty parking garage with someone who betrayed every confidence they'd shared. All their security plans, all their safe locations, all their protection protocols had been compromised from the beginning. The letters, the threats, those were yours? Those were motivation. Fear makes people predictable, manageable. I needed you focused on external threats while I handled internal restructuring. What internal restructuring? Your company, your accounts, your assets. Amazing what you can accomplish with executive passwords and biometric access. Daniel's expression went cold with understanding. While he'd been fighting visible enemies, his security chief had been quietly stealing everything he'd built. The corporate conspiracy had been cover for a much more personal theft. You've been embezzling from MindBridge. I've been redirecting resources toward more profitable ventures. Your healthcare mission was noble, but financially limiting. I found better uses for those funds, such as private military contracting, corporate espionage, government surveillance technology, markets where ethics don't interfere with profit margins. The revelation was staggering. Brennan hadn't just stolen money. He'd transformed Daniel's healing-focused technology into tools for violence and oppression. The federal agents, the investigations, all legitimate. I needed Caldwell eliminated because his amateur hour was drawing attention. Better to sacrifice small players to protect the larger operation. You think this is about money? This is about keeping the natural order, and your kind breeding with ours disrupts everything we've built. My kind? Tasha asked. Black women who don't know their place, who think they can climb social ladders by spreading their legs for white billionaires. Brennan's mask was completely off now, revealing hatred that went beyond greed into racial territory that made the air toxic. This isn't about corporate crime, Daniel realized. This is about racism. This is about maintaining systems that work. Rich white men marry appropriate women and produce appropriate heirs. They don't create mixed-race bastards with hospital staff. The words hit like physical blows. This wasn't just corporate espionage or financial theft. This was someone who'd spent months planning to destroy their family because their love challenged his worldview. You sent the death threats. I orchestrated comprehensive pressure designed to end your inappropriate relationship and return you to sensible decision-making. By threatening to kill my family. By providing motivation to choose correctly. High-speed chase through Atlanta streets. Tasha's quick thinking, saves them again, became necessary when Brennan realized his confession had revealed too much. But this time, they were trapped underground with someone who knew every escape route because he designed their security protocols. Unfortunately, Brennan continued, pulling a weapon from his jacket, you've proven resistant to reasonable persuasion. Time for more direct methods. Daniel stepped in front of Tasha, shielding her and their unborn daughter with his body. What do you want? Transfer of company assets to accounts I control. Dissolution of your engagement. Public statement that your relationship was a mistake caused by medical trauma. And if I refuse, then your fiancé and son suffer consequences that will motivate better cooperation. The threat was specific enough to be real, detailed enough to be actionable. Brennan had been planning this confrontation for months, accounting for every variable except the possibility that Daniel would choose love over everything else he'd built. You miscalculated, Daniel said quietly. Ow! You assumed I'd sacrifice my family to protect my empire. But my family is my empire now. Daniel's phone buzzed with an incoming text that made Brennan frown. Then another. Then a flood of notifications that suggested something was happening outside their underground confrontation. What did you do? Brennan demanded. Insurance policy. Voice-activated recording. Live transmission to federal agents. GPS tracking that's been broadcasting this conversation to people who take domestic terrorism seriously. As sirens closed in and enemies surrounded them, Tasha felt the first sharp pain in her abdomen. The baby was coming early, and they were trapped. The parking garage suddenly filled with tactical lights and federal agents who'd been listening to every word of Brennan's confession. But the stress and adrenaline had triggered something in Tasha's body that couldn't wait for legal proceedings. Daniel, she gasped, doubling over as pain shot through her abdomen. Something's wrong. Medical emergency, he shouted to the FBI team. We need paramedics now. Brennan was being handcuffed and read his rights, but Tasha was fighting a different kind of emergency. Their daughter had decided that parking garage confrontations were the perfect time to make her entrance into the world. It's too early, she panted between contractions. She's strong like her mother, Daniel said, supporting her as federal agents called for ambulances. She'll be fine. How do you know? Because she's been listening to us fight for her for months. She knows she's wanted. As medical personnel arrived and chaos swirled around them, Tasha realized their daughter would have quite a birth story, born during the arrest of domestic terrorists, welcomed into a world her parents had literally fought to make safe for her. Ready to meet your daughter? The paramedic asked as they loaded Tasha into the ambulance. More than ready, Daniel replied, climbing in beside her. We've been waiting for her our whole lives. She'd brought him back to life once. Now he would move heaven and earth to bring their child safely into the world. What would you fight hardest to protect? When everything was on the line, what mattered most? Share your defining moment. Atlanta General Hospital's delivery room became a fortress as Daniel coordinated with FBI while Tasha fought the most important battle of her life, bringing their daughter into a dangerous world. The same hospital where they'd met, where accusations had flown and trust had been built and enemies had tried to kill them, now witnessed the creation of new life from their love. Dr. Martinez, who treated Daniel's accident injuries, was delivering their baby with the kind of poetic justice that made Tasha believe in destiny. Contractions are 3 minutes apart, Dr. Martinez announced, checking monitors while federal agents stood guard outside. This baby wants to be born tonight. She's early, Tasha panted between waves of pain that felt like her body was splitting in half. 36 weeks is early but viable, the doctor assured her. Strong heartbeat, good position. She's ready even if we weren't expecting her yet. Daniel held Tasha's hand while simultaneously coordinating security through his earpiece, multitasking like only someone who'd built an empire while falling in love could manage. Brennan's in federal custody, Agent Rodriguez reported through Daniel's communication device. His entire operation is blown. Accounts frozen, associates arrested, weapons seized. The threat is neutralized. Good, Daniel replied, then immediately refocused on Tasha. How are you doing? Like I'm being torn apart from the inside, she gasped, but also excited to meet her. She's going to be beautiful. She's going to be stubborn. Look how she's insisting on being born during the most dramatic possible circumstances. Another contraction hit, stronger than before, making Tasha grip Daniel's hand hard enough to leave marks. Pain that meant their daughter was fighting her way into existence, determined to join a family that had fought through everything to make space for her. I can see the head, Dr. Martinez announced. That's contraction. Give me a big push. Push, Daniel whispered against Tasha's ear, his voice mixing encouragement with awe. Our daughter is ready to meet the world, and I promise she'll inherit a safer one. The delivery room lights seemed too bright, medical equipment too loud, everything too intense for something as natural as birth. But when Tasha pushed and their daughter emerged into the world with a cry that announced her arrival to anyone within earshot, the chaos became celebration. She's perfect, Dr. Martinez said, holding their daughter up for them to see. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, fully developed despite being early. Daniel cried, actual tears streaming down his face as he watched his daughter take her first breaths, tiny fists waving in protest at the bright, cold world she'd been thrust into. This was the man who'd built technology empires and survived assassination attempts, reduced to overwhelming emotion by a 7-pound miracle. She has your eyes, Tasha observed, exhausted but laughing at Daniel's emotional breakdown. She has your strength, he replied. Listen to those lungs. Their daughter's cries filled the room with indignant demands for attention, comfort, and immediate service. She was definitely related to both of them, determined, vocal, and completely unimpressed by the circumstances of her birth. What's her name? Dr. Martinez asked as he cleaned and examined their daughter. Daniel and Tasha looked at each other, realizing they'd been so focused on surviving threats and planning weddings that they'd never finalized their daughter's name. Sophia, Tasha said suddenly. Sophia Grace Whitmore. Sophia, Daniel repeated, testing the sound. Wisdom and grace. Perfect for someone born during such interesting circumstances. You like it? I love it. I love her. I love you. Daniel kissed Tasha's forehead while their daughter was weighed and measured and declared completely healthy despite her dramatic entrance. As their daughter's cries filled the room, Tasha saw something in Daniel's eyes that took her breath away. Not just love, but a question he'd been carrying for months. The wedding, Tasha said suddenly. Everything's planned for Saturday, but nothing. We're getting married Saturday as planned, with our daughter as the guest of honor. Are you sure? She's 3 days old. I'll be exhausted. I'm sure. We've fought through corporate crime, assassination attempts, federal investigations, and domestic terrorism to get to our wedding day. Nothing's stopping us now. Not even a newborn baby, especially not a newborn baby. She's the reason we're doing this, to make our family official in every possible way. Dr. Martinez returned with their daughter wrapped in hospital blankets, ready to be held by parents who'd literally moved heaven and earth to bring her safely into existence. Here's your little fighter, he said, placing Sophia in Tasha's arms. The moment was perfect. New life nestled against the woman who'd saved Daniel's life, held by the man who'd transformed from isolated CEO to devoted father. Their daughter blinked up at them with unfocused eyes that would eventually see a world her parents had made safer through their love. She's so small, Daniel marveled, touching Sophia's tiny hand with one finger. She's exactly the right size, Tasha corrected. Perfect timing, perfect size, perfect everything. Outside the delivery room, Marcus waited with Agent Rodriguez and hospital staff, who become extended family through months of shared crisis. When Daniel opened the door to announce the birth, cheers erupted that could probably be heard throughout the hospital. "Is she okay?" Marcus asked immediately, pushing past federal agents to see his new sister. "She's perfect," Daniel assured him. "Want to meet her?" Marcus approached cautiously, 13-year-old bravado replaced by wonder at the reality of new life. "She's so tiny." "You were tiny once too," Tasha said softly. "Can I hold her?" "Of course. She's your sister." Watching Marcus hold Sophia with careful reverence, Daniel realized their unconventional family was complete. Not traditional, not what anyone would have predicted, but absolutely perfect for the people they'd become through loving each other. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, still staring at his sister in amazement. "Now we go home," Daniel replied. "All of us, together, as a family that nobody can threaten or separate or destroy. And Saturday? Saturday, we make it official." As hospital night settled around them, and Sophia slept peacefully in her father's arms, Tasha marveled at how far they'd come from that first controversial kiss in a sterile room. Love had transformed them all. The isolated CEO, the overworked nurse, the boy who'd needed a father figure, and now the daughter who'd been born into a world made safe by people willing to fight for what mattered most. "Ready to take her home?" Dr. Martinez asked after final examinations and paperwork. "We've been ready our whole lives," Daniel answered, speaking for all of them. The family who'd been forged by crisis and sealed by commitment was finally complete. He'd asked her to save his life once. Now he was asking her to share it forever. What makes a proposal perfect? The ring, the setting, or the person asking? What's your idea of the perfect commitment? Share below. 3 days after Sophia's birth, Daniel stood in the bridal suite of their wedding venue, holding his daughter while Tasha got ready for the ceremony that would make their unconventional family legally official. The magnolia trees were still blooming. String lights still created magic in the afternoon sun, and their love story was about to reach its perfect conclusion. The hospital room where they'd first clashed now glowed with afternoon light, their newborn daughter sleeping peacefully as Daniel dropped to one knee beside Tasha's bed. Actually, the proposal had happened in the hospital room right after Sophia's birth, when Daniel had been overwhelmed by gratitude and love and the recognition that he wanted to spend forever with the woman who'd given him everything that mattered. But today was about celebrating that commitment in front of everyone who'd supported them through corporate conspiracies, assassination attempts, and the complex process of building a family from the most unlikely circumstances. "You look beautiful," Daniel told Tasha as she emerged from the bridal suite in a simple white dress that accommodated her post-pregnancy body while making her look radiant. "I look tired," she corrected. 3-day-old baby plus wedding preparation equals exhaustion. "You look perfect." Marcus appeared in his role as ring bearer and big brother, carrying Sophia in her specially designed baby carrier that would allow her to participate in the ceremony. At 13, he'd become expert at infant care and wedding logistics simultaneously. "She's been awake for 20 minutes, he reported. "Fed, changed, and ready to watch you guys get married." "Any last-minute doubts?" Daniel asked Tasha, only half joking. "About marrying the man who fought corporate criminals to protect my son, survived assassination attempts to build a family with me, and just spent 3 days learning to change diapers?" "No doubts at all." The chapel in Birmingham, where Tasha grew up, glowed with candles and possibility. Corporate titans sitting beside hospital workers, technology meeting heart, past healing future. The ceremony was small but meaningful. Family and close friends who'd witnessed their journey from enemies to lovers to parents. Agent Rodriguez sat next to Dr. Martinez. Daniel's reformed board members mixed with Tasha's nursing colleagues. Marcus stood proudly as best man, while Sophia slept peacefully in the front row under the watchful eye of Daniel's assistant turned honorary grandmother. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we're gathered to celebrate the union of Daniel and Tasha, whose love story proves that the most unexpected beginnings can create the strongest foundations. Daniel's vows were simple and direct. Tasha, you kissed me when I couldn't kiss you back, cared for me when I couldn't care for myself, and loved me when I didn't know how to love anyone. You saved my life, healed my soul, and gave me a family I never thought I deserved. I promise to spend forever earning the right to call you mine. Tasha's vows carried the strength that had attracted him from the beginning. Daniel, you saw my worth before I believed in it myself. You protected my son like he was your own, fought battles I couldn't fight alone, and showed me that love doesn't rescue people. It recognizes the strength that was always there. I promise to build something beautiful with you that nothing can destroy. The exchange of rings sealed promises made in hospital rooms and corporate boardrooms and parking garages where they'd fought for the right to love each other freely. You may kiss the bride, the minister announced. Daniel's kiss was reverent and celebratory, tasting like new beginnings and hard-won happiness. Around them, their chosen family applauded because some love stories deserve public celebration. Mrs. Whitmore, he whispered against her lips. I love the sound of that, she replied. The reception continued the celebration with dancing and toasts and the kind of joy that comes from surviving everything that tried to destroy you. Marcus gave a speech about finding a stepdad who didn't try to replace his father, but created something new and better. Daniel's business partner spoke about witnessing love that had transformed a ruthless CEO into someone who prioritized family above empire. But the most meaningful moment came when Sophia woke during their first dance, demanding attention with cries that made everyone laugh and reminded them why they were really celebrating. Our daughter has opinions about our dancing, Daniel observed, taking Sophia from Marcus while continuing to sway with Tasha. She wants to be included, Tasha said, moving closer so they formed a family circle on the dance floor. Marcus joined them without being asked, and suddenly their first dance as married couple became their first dance as officially complete family. For people who'd found each other through crisis, bound together by choice, celebrating love that had survived everything designed to destroy it. So what would you do if someone saw your worth before you believed in it yourself? Tasha asked, echoing the question from their first real conversation. Would you run? Or would you build something that lasts? Build something that lasts, Daniel answered definitely. Something so strong that nothing can threaten it. Even corporate criminals? Even corporate criminals? Even racist terrorists? Even racist terrorists? Even sleep deprivation from newborn babies? Daniel laughed, spinning Tasha carefully while Marcus held Sophia and their family celebrated on the dance floor. Especially sleep deprivation from newborn babies. She'd entered his life as a healer. She was leaving it as his heart, his home, his forever. So what would you do if a single moment of compassion changed your entire life? If kindness and darkness became love and light? Comment below with your own story of unexpected connection. 2 years later, Daniel stood in the same hospital room where everything began, but this time he was the visitor watching Tasha work her healing magic on patients who needed her expertise and compassion. The body she once offered as sacrifice now created life by choice, the ultimate testament to what happens when love sees dignity instead of desperation. Atlanta General had promoted her to head of critical care, recognizing that her experience with complex medical situations and crisis management made her invaluable for training other nurses and coordinating patient care during emergencies. Mrs. Patterson is responding well to the new treatment protocol, Tasha reported to Dr. Martinez during rounds. Her family is relieved, and she's asking about going home. Daniel watched from the doorway, still amazed by Tasha's ability to balance medical expertise with emotional support. She'd always been exceptional at her job, but marriage and motherhood had added layers of wisdom that made her even more effective at healing people who needed both medical intervention and human connection. Ready for lunch? He asked when she finished her rounds. Always ready for lunch when it means seeing my husband, she replied, kissing him with the easy affection of people who'd learned to appreciate ordinary moments after surviving extraordinary circumstances. They walked to the hospital cafeteria, the same route she'd taken as an overworked single mom, now transformed by the presence of someone who'd chosen to share her daily world instead of expecting her to abandon it for his. Marcus called, Daniel reported while they found a quiet table. Basketball tryouts went well. He made varsity, and he wants to know if we're coming to his game Friday. Of course we're coming. All of us. Sophia sat in her high chair between them, 18 months old and already showing signs of inheriting both parents' determination. She demolished Cheerios with scientific precision while babbling commentary about everything around her. She's going to be trouble, Tasha observed fondly. She's going to be unstoppable, Daniel corrected. Look at her parents. The nursery walls glowed soft yellow in the morning light, hand-painted constellations spanning the ceiling. Not just stars from fairy tales, but the actual night sky that had watched over Brooklyn the night they met. Actually, the nursery walls displayed the Atlanta skyline, painted by an artist who specialized in creating custom murals for families with unique love stories. Sophia's room told their story in images. Hospital buildings where they'd met, corporate towers where they'd fought, the wedding venue where they'd married, all connected by constellation patterns that suggested destiny had guided their path. She's walking more each day, Daniel observed, watching Sophia cruise between furniture with increasing confidence. Soon she'll be running. Then we'll really be in trouble. Bring it on. I survived corporate espionage and assassination attempts. I can handle a toddler. Famous last words, Tasha laughed. That afternoon, they drove to the Tasha Whitmore Medical Center for Health Equity, the foundation they'd built together using recovered embezzlement funds and Daniel's resources to provide cutting-edge medical care in underserved communities. The building where Tasha had once feared she'd have to sell her body to save her mother now bore her married name and served hundreds of families who needed medical care but couldn't afford traditional healthcare costs. The quarterly reports look amazing, Daniel told the foundation board during their monthly meeting. We've served over 2,000 patients, provided free diagnostic services to 1,500 families, and our Health AI platform has reduced diagnostic errors by 30%. But the real success stories weren't in statistics. They were in faces. Like Mrs. Johnson, who'd received cancer treatment that saved her life. Like the Martinez family, whose premature twin survived because of equipment the foundation provided. Like dozens of families who no longer had to choose between medical care and financial survival. Most importantly, Tasha added to the board presentation, we've proven that technology and compassion can work together to heal communities, not just individuals. She placed his hand on her growing belly, where life they'd created by choice, not contract, stirred beneath her skin. This is what happens, she whispered, when sacrifice becomes celebration. Their second pregnancy had been planned, anticipated, celebrated from a moment they decided Sophia needed a sibling, and their family had room for more love. This baby would be born into security and joy instead of crisis and danger. How's he doing today? Daniel asked, feeling movement beneath his palm. Active. I think he's going to be a soccer player like his big brother. Or a dancer like his big sister. Sophia's not even 2. How do you know she's going to be a dancer? Have you seen how she moves to music? Pure rhythm and grace, just like her mother. Tender moment emphasizing partnership and future. Celebration of her body, now creating life by choice, came naturally in the privacy of their bedroom that night, when Sophia was sleeping and Marcus was at a friend's house, and they had rare time to focus entirely on each other. I love watching you pregnant, Daniel confessed, his hands reverent on her changing body. Not just because you're carrying our child, but because you glow with the kind of happiness that comes from choices made freely. He kissed her with reverence that had deepened, not diminished with time. Each touch a reminder that her body had never been a transaction, but always a temple, worthy of worship even before he recognized its worth. Their lovemaking was gentle and deep, celebrating the partnership they'd built and the future they were creating together. Two people who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances, now making love in the brightest ones. Their connection strengthened by every challenge they'd survived. I love you, Tasha whispered afterward, curled against Daniel's chest while their son moved restlessly between them. I love you too. All of you. Our whole beautiful, complicated, perfect family. Even when Marcus brings home stray cats. Especially when Marcus brings home stray cats. Someone taught me that taking care of vulnerable creatures is what good people do. Someone taught me that being vulnerable with the right person is the strongest thing you can do. They lay in comfortable silence, listening to Atlanta's nighttime sounds and feeling their son respond to his father's voice with kicks and movement that suggested he was already eager to join the family celebration. The next morning brought their usual chaos. Sophia demanding attention, Marcus rushing to get ready for school, Daniel coordinating foundation business while making breakfast, Tasha getting ready for another day of healing people at the hospital. Normal family morning, Marcus observed, grabbing his backpack and kissing his baby sister goodbye. Best kind of morning, Daniel agreed. See you tonight for family dinner? Tasha asked, adjusting her scrubs while Sophia clung to her leg. Wouldn't miss it. I'll pick up groceries and attempt to cook something that won't give us food poisoning. I love your cooking. You love that I try to cook. Same thing. YouTube-style closing came that evening as they sat around their dinner table. Daniel's attempted lasagna actually edible. Sophia successfully feeding herself with minimal mess. Marcus sharing stories from school. Their unborn son active enough to make Tasha laugh during conversation. This was their life now. Not dramatic or crisis-filled or newsworthy. Just real and daily and absolutely perfect for people who'd learned that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up consistently for the ordinary moments that actually matter. So what would you do if someone saw your worth before you believed in it yourself? Tasha asked their assembled family, repeating the question that had started their journey. Would you run? Or would you build something that lasts? Build something that lasts, Marcus answered immediately. Like family. Like love that survives everything, Daniel added. Like cookies. Sophia contributed, raising her sippy cup in celebration. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that make you feel, think, and maybe even heal a little. Tell me in the comments what aspect of their journey resonated most with you. And remember, the most powerful love doesn't rescue you from your life. It recognizes the strength that's been there all along. But really, their story was simpler than social media soundbites or inspirational messages. It was about a woman who kissed an unconscious patient out of compassion, and a man who woke up grateful instead of angry, and the family they built from the most unlikely beginning. Some people meet at coffee shops or dating apps or through mutual friends. Daniel and Tasha met through medical crisis, corporate conspiracy, and a moment of human connection that changed everything. Their love story proved that healing happens in many ways. Through medicine, through technology, through fighting for justice, but most of all through people who see each other's worth and choose to build something beautiful together. The kiss that started everything had become a marriage that would last forever, a family that couldn't be broken, and a foundation that would help other people heal for generations. Not bad for a moment of weakness that turned out to be the strongest thing either of them had ever done.